Hello. I'm not gonna be editing this video because I don't have a good video editor right now. I used Kden Live just now and it crashed like a bunch of times. It was so glitchy. I can't be arsed. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look at this script. Here's an example. This is character.cs from Samurai vs Zombies 1, just a file, a random one that I took. I did modify it slightly, so like the structure is might be a bit different from yours, but otherwise it's like pretty much the same code, just a slightly different formatting. Um, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to explain the stuff that comes up, which should hopefully give you a better idea of how to just read code in general, and then modify it. So some of the stuff you may already know, some stuff should be new. But let's just start with the most basic thing, the file, right? So if I go back to the actual repository, I have my file in the gameplay folder. So you don't have these folders because I made them myself. Because, fun fact, Unity doesn't care about folders. If you put a script in a folder, it just treats it like there's no folder anyway. So I did this to help like organize them. I'm not finished and it's kind of messy still, but that's why mine's different. And here you see you have a character.cs, which is over here. Notice that the class name down here, this is a class name, matches the file name. That's important. And you have no duplicate file names because you have naming conflicts, which we can also get into later. Um, so that's a file. It's the name of the class.cs. CS stands for C sharp, which is a language name, C sharp, blah, blah, blah. And then straight off the bat, first line we have using system. Using is a keyword. We know it's a keyword because it's purple. That means that public is a keyword, class is a keyword, private is a keyword, const is a keyword, even float and int, I'm pretty sure are keywords, although they're also types, and I'll get to that later as well. Um, of course, yours won't necessarily be purple. Mine's purple because I'm using VS Code with like a special theme. But whatever color you're using and all these are, they should be the same, more or less. Um, and that tells you what the keywords are. What's a keyword? Well, a keyword is different from other things. For instance, let's say here, K auto recovery delay. That's a name that the programmer put in, right? So like I can change this to like delay, to delay, whatever. And like I've changed the name of the thing. That's what I've chosen. The people who made Samurai vs. Zombies Defense, the Glue developers, they have no control over these words. These are keywords that are defined by the language itself, you know? So think like my name, right? And like let's say Kojo and Jonathan. And is a word from the English language. Kojo and Jonathan are just names that have been. I mean, they're not part of the English language. They're not part of the English language themselves, but they're being used in English. So you kind of think of it like that. Um, anyway, and then the using keyword just imports a module. A module contains like functions and stuff you can use. So for instance, well, you can see here we're importing system, which is like the big one. System.collecting.generic, which will come up later, and using the Unity engine because this is Unity. C Sharp is not a Unity language. Unity just uses it. So for Unity to work properly with C Sharp, it needs to import its own module or library, and that's why we usually have this in pretty much every C Sharp file. Now, don't worry too much about this, but just know that if you want to use certain code, like let's say down here, I'm using game object, right? Game object is defined inside the Unity engine module. If I do not have this, then I would not be allowed to use game object because it belongs to the Unity language. Likewise, if I want to use list, this list thing as well is also from systems.collections.generic, I think, and that's why we have to include this. So, like the language comes with stuff out of the box. Like you don't need to, you don't need any of these if you want to have like a float or an int or a string or a bool like down here. Like these are just part of the language, whatever. But if you want to use certain things like list or the Unity stuff, then that's where you need to import the stuff you want to use. So hopefully that makes sense. Moving on then. Oh, by the way, uh, while or after watching this, well, preferably after watching this because I might answer questions later. Feel free to shoot me any questions, and I'll try to elaborate in my own time. moving on to the actual code. So this stuff you can pretty much just ignore, but it's just good to know what it does because you will need to use it if you want to like use extra code, whatever. But now for the actual code, C sharp is what we call an object-oriented language. Object-oriented programming is programming that is object-oriented, or programming that uses things called objects. So, I mean, the most basic example that everyone uses is like, let's say I have a dog. What is a dog? A dog is an animal. Let's say we have a cat. What is a cat? A cat is also an animal. So we have these groups, right? And we could say that or let's say we have a human, right? And now let's say we want to create a human. So let's say we want to create a human called Kojo, like me. Then we have created the human object. Kojo is now an object of the human class. Again, Kojo is a human object that belongs, that belongs to the human class. So over here, you can see we have public class character. A class defines, like, a class isn't an object itself, but a class is what you can make objects from. And it takes a while to get used to, but just bear with me. Let's say, I mean, this probably isn't the case, but let's say that character was just like any character in the game. Maybe that actually is the case. Like let's say you have a character farmer, right? Here I have our class definition, which contains all the code for the farmer, what it does, and then somewhere in a different file or whatever, we could create this. We could say character farmer, right? And now we have created a character that is a farmer. So we have our farmer object of the character class. And this is useful because then we can like have a character samurai or a character zombie, right? We can create all these different entities, different objects using the same class, using the same code. Because if we didn't have this, then we'd have to like create a unique code for every single type of thing in our game. But instead, we can just reuse the same code by just saying, this is a character, use the same code, and then we might like change some stuff later. Again, more on that, but like, this is the basic concept. So that's what a class does. It lets you create something like this. And to go even simpler, by the way, to just step back a bit, you should be somewhat familiar with variables, right? Like if I have, I don't know, int age equals 19, this statement. In C sharp, I have created a variable called age that is an integer. This is the type, and its value is being set to 19. Sorry. So, I mean, variables are, you should already know pretty much. They're variables, they change. If you don't want them to change, if you want them to be the same all the time, then you just put const before it, which means constant. Like you can see here, we have constants because these values never change, which is why that is there. But usually variables will change. And also you notice that if I put const, the color changes. That's just something that's a bit useful, I guess. Um, but yeah, variables are called variables because variable in English means something that changes. So I could do age equals 17. Oh, sorry, okay, I guess 17. So now I have created my variable called age, and I set it to 19. And now in the next line, the next instruction for the computer, I'm changing the variable to 17. So here it was 19, now it's 17. Again, basic stuff. You might already know that, but the main thing here I want you to focus on is this, the type. Int, short for integer. What is an integer? If you don't know math, it's a whole number. Like this, if I were to have a decimal, I would do like float height, let's say, equals 1.75. Like let's say you're 1.75 meters tall. Then here I have a decimal. And if I wanted to do an int, that would not be valid. In this case, I don't get any errors because my thing's not like scanning it, but this is wrong. You would need to use different types depending on what you're doing. Or let's say I have a string, my name. Because my name isn't a number. Like it's it's text, right? It's a word. So I have this. And all of these are different types. Now, again, this is very basic. You might already know this, but just knowing this is useful because then you might look at, okay, look here. Farmer, I said, is an object, but it's also a variable. Like the object is just like the concept, the actual thing it is in like the system is a variable. So I could say farmer equals, well, I guess the way you would do it properly is like new character, and it's like, I don't know, the health is 50 and like the damage is 60, like whatever I have here for my definition, right? So this you can say is like the same as like setting it to 19, just in like a more complicated way because it's complicated. But just focus on this side, and you'll see that okay, we're defining a variable, but the type is not one of these things. One of these purple things is our own custom type. We have created a type by creating a class. What's a class? Character. Where is the definition for the class? Here. All the code. Now you'll see here. I'm gonna now delete this. You'll see here below that we have our public class, blah, blah, blah. We have this opening curly bracket, and everything inside here, if I can close it, open it, everything inside here is part of this character class. And I almost wonder if I could find a constructor. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, it's a bit of a jump, but this here, if you look for the name of the class as a function, I just do the name of the class and then the opening bracket. You'll find the constructor, which basically is what like this function, and I'll explain functions in a bit. But this a constructor is just a special function that is called automatically when the object is created. So like when I create a farmer, without doing anything, once I create the farmer, this function will just happen automatically. In this case, it's a very simple function. Like there's nothing special to it. But in other files, you'd have like you might have different things. But anyway, just note that because that will be important later, and also note that it has no type. So I mean, we'll look more at functions later, but you can see like for example, this one has a float with a name, but this one has nothing, and that's because its type is itself. Um, but again, more on that later. So another big thing, public and private. In C++, you wouldn't put these everywhere. You just do like, well, if you want to do public, you do this, and then just have everything else everything underneath is automatically public, or you could do like private like this. But for C sharp, everything you need to say manually, whether it's public or private. So you can see here, I have public class character, reachable. What does a public class mean? If this was private, it would mean that the other files in my Unity program would not be able to see character. So I couldn't do like character, you know, character farmer in like a different file. I would not be able to do this because it's private, which means I can only use it inside my file. But if I make it public, then hey, it's public. Everyone can now see it. Everyone can use it, um, and that's pretty much all it is. That's all it means. Likewise, inside a class, we have private and public as well. So these are all private. This is protected. Whatever, I'll explain that later. But you still have public, and usually the public is for functions. Again, more on that later. But private means that, let's say I create a character farmer, right? And like you might be thinking, okay, how do I get the farmer's auto recovery delay? Well, if this was public, then I would be allowed to do this. Just farmer.k auto recovery delay. And here I am accessing this variable by just doing this. But if I make it private, what happens is that I can no longer get this. It's hidden away from me. The only thing that can use this is the class itself, inside the class, like inside. Anything outside of this will not be allowed to use it unless it is public. So instead what we get is we have um, Well, I mean, a good example of this, right? Let's look at the mbuff icon client variable. So this is defined up here. It's private. So I'm not allowed to do farmer.mbuff icon client because it's private. I can't access it. But instead, what Unity projects do a lot, and what this game does a lot especially, is I have a private variable here, but if I go down, I have a function that literally just returns the variable. And what this does, I mean, I'll go into the details later. What it does is it makes it so that if I want to, I mean, it's not even a function, it's crazy, but I can just do this. This is the same as this, by the way, just that this one is not allowed because this is private. This one is allowed because it's public. And the reason they do this is because if I have this now, um, if I go down here, you see this get and set. So here I have get, here I have set, right? Get is lets you take a variable, like a value, and set lets you change it. Now notice here, there's only a get and no set. That means I'm not allowed to change this buff icon to something else. I'm not allowed to. I can only look at it and read it and get it. Now in Samurai vs. Zombies Defense, the get set thing is overused like hell. Like it doesn't even need to be used a lot of the time. But just be mindful that it exists. Um, but anyway, so yeah, public. We've gone over that. Class is just a way of defining this. Every single file has a class because again, unlike C++ or whatever, C# actually forces you to use classes. So it's fully object oriented. And then I have the name of the class. Again, this could be different, by the way. This could be like character or like zombie or like whatever. Like whatever that is, that's just the name. It's not important to the actual C#. It's just like the game, and the programmers can choose that name. And then I'm going to ignore this for now because it's quite complicated. But it's something called what's the word? Inheritance, and it's people don't like it anymore because it can get quite messy. Personally, I do like it, but it's complicated. So just ignore that for now. And now let's finally look inside the class. So this is all the stuff again, all of that. It's like part of my character. Over here, I have a constant. So again, you have a constant versus a variable. A variable can change, a constant cannot change. And a constant, the difference is that you have const. It is private, so anything outside of this code here is not allowed to use it. Only the stuff inside the class can use it. We have the type is a float. A float is just a decimal number. And in C# you put an F to say it's a float. You could also do like 2.0. For some reason, C# forces you to use an F. If you don't use an F, then it will actually tell you, like, it'll get mad at you, which is really annoying, but just know that you do need to use an F for floats, for decimal values. Compare that to an integer, which is just 1. You know, like, there's no 1F, just 1, because it's a whole number, so it's fine. And then we have the variable name, which is k auto recovery delay. Once again, just this is not C#. This is just for this game specifically. The developers, sorry, wow, the developers use k to mean constant. So all of these start with k, right? That's because all of them are constant. Nowadays, people don't do this because you don't need to. Like you can see it; it's constant there. But this was a common practice back in the day, so that can help explain if you see this stuff. Also, what's funny, these constants aren't even used, right? So, pro tip, if you're on VS Code, hit Control F, and you can search for anything in your file. So, I already said, right? If something is private inside a class, only the code inside the class can use it. That means nothing else in my entire project will use this variable except for this file. All of this code here is the only place it can be. Okay? Now let's search for it. What do we get? We get one result. Why do we get one result? Because this is never used. For some reason, the Samurai vs. Zombies Defense code has a bunch of values that are just never used. So if you're a modder, Right, and want to change this. Like, I want to change the explosion range to 500. Well, sorry to say, if you change these, nothing will happen because they're not used. So really, we might as well just delete these, and it would make no difference. So that's one annoying thing to be careful of. If you see a private variable, make sure just Control F and check its name to see where it's used. If it's used in one place, which is like here, where it's first declared, then just ignore it. It's a useless variable. You can even delete it if you want. The real juicy stuff comes later. So let's have a look at melee attack delay. Okay, so first of all, you'll notice that the color is different. This is dark blue, this is light blue. Once again, that's because of the const. If I put const here, it will become dark blue. But if I do not, then light blue. So light blue just means it can change. And now let's see if this one has uses. Yes. So I just double clicked, Control F, to search for it. And you can see there are 7 different uses. If my thing isn't covering it, which it might be actually. So let me just move that for a second. In the top right over here, I can see 1 of 7 uses. And if I press the arrow down here, I can see where this variable is used. And this is where the real modding stuff happens, right? So I can see here, for example, I have the update attack function, and it checks if the melee attack is more than 0, and then it sets it to something based on like some other values, and then it does stuff with it. And then we can now modify that code if you want to change something about the melee attack delay. So I'll move my camera back here. Or let's look at something else. Let's look at... Ooh, wow. Something else is interesting. I don't know, like, let's say character stats, right? That seems interesting. mstats has 94 different uses, used all over the place. So like you can see that if you want to get a character's health, for instance, it will get health from mstats. If you want to get max health is an mstats, health recovery is an mstats, unique ID. So we can see here that if we want to modify like the character's health and damage and stuff, then we need to look at mstats. But once again, mstats, like going back to like the class object thing, mstats is just an object. It's a variable. mstats doesn't contain any code per se. It just has like values. The actual code then that we'd want to look at is here, character stats, which is another class. And to prove this to you, let's go in my file and look at that, character stats.c#. This here is actually it's not a class, it's a struct. The difference between a struct and a class is that, trick question, there is no difference, but usually people use structs for no functions, whereas people use classes if there are functions. Just something to note. But you can see that mstats is a character stats object, and it is made from the character stats struct or class. And inside we have all these variables, we have is enemy, is player, is base, is boss, is flying, that's important, is a gate rusher, like the Chochinobake lanterns, right? All of these things are here. And then this gives us more information, like say, okay, so if I do mstats, then I'm getting that stuff, like if I do mstats.speed, well, that's this variable here, speed. Or if I'm looking for health, mstats.health, well, once again, if I just look for it here, boom, health, max health. Now, I can't change it. I can't actually change anything here because a struct is just a list of variables that will change later. But we can definitely interact with this. Like, let's say I wanted to, right now, make a mod that gives every single character 2 times health. I'll just change this to ×2. And look, now if I try to get health, again, it's a bit complicated if you don't understand how to read it. But to just explain what this does, if I want to get health from my character, like farmer.health, to get my farmer's health, this will return the stats for the farmer, the health stat, ×2, because I've added this here, ×2. So there's a very simple mod right there. Now let me get more into more detail now about like what this stuff actually is. So I said these were functions. That's a lie, but it's also not a lie. C sharp is weird, by the way. Like I'm just gonna put that out there. What you learn in C sharp will probably not even be like a thing in other languages. Yeah, I don't love C sharp, but it has some interesting quirks. So one of these quirks is this is you would use this like a variable. In fact, let's use a simpler example. Like where's the health one? Yeah, here health. Okay, well maybe it's not that simple, but whatever. Like let's say I just ignored all that. Like if you compare it to this, right? You have a protected bool whatever, and here I have a public float health. You know, like it's like a variable, except we've now given it extra instructions. We've given it get information and set information. Now, to make this a bit simpler, let me just collapse that. So, you can see very clearly, we have get and set. That's it. And once again, get tells you what happens if I try to get information. Set says what happens if I want to change the variable. And then if there's no set, I can't change it. And if there's no get, then I can't get it. But I think there has to be a get, just logically. Okay, so the get's very simple. It just takes the M stats, so the farmers, for instance, if this was a farmer character, it would take the farmer's stats and the health from that, and then just return it, right? And its return, we'll see in functions later, but return just means, like this is the final value. Like let's say I put like here, I don't know, string foo equals stinker, right? Here I have defined a string foo equals stinker, and let's say I did like int zombie health equals 5, right? This is cool and all, but what actually matters is what's after this return. So this is what actually goes from here inside all the way back to this actual variable here. Yeah. So right now, all of this stuff just gets ignored because it's not actually being returned. But let's say I did return mstats plus health plus zombie health, right? Now I'm using this variable. This one I'm not, but now I'm using this variable, and therefore I'm returning um, something a bit more complicated. So, I mean, we'll see more examples of that later. But just know that return I mean, it's English, right? It returns the value. It gives it back and tells it, like, here you go. And that's the get. And then if I want to change my health, right? Let's say I want to change the health of my character for some reason. Well, it's a bit complicated because there's a lot more code here. I'm gonna read this, just go through it to give you an idea of how you could read this kind of code. So this says, when I want to change my character's health, if the value, so value is just like this basically. This just really annoys me that it uses value, but like it is legitimately just taking this over here. In fact, no, it's not. Value is like what you pass into it. Okay, so when I use set, let's say I have my farmer.health, right? If I use set, I want to set it to something else. Let's say I want to set my farmer's health to 100. Value is this here. It is the value I'm putting inside. The reason this sucks is because in every other language, you just use a function. And again, we'll see that later, but a function makes more sense. That's why this like whole get set thing can be a bit complicated and confusing at first. But just know that the value is like the new thing I want to change my variable to. I want to change my health to this value. So this says, if the new value is less than the current value, so let's say my farmer's health is 200 and I want to change it to 100, that's less, right? Then you'll say if the character is a player, or this means or is not an enemy. This means not, and the character's auto health recovery is greater or equal to 0, and some global timer for the allies, and the invincibility timer is greater than 0. it's a lot, then just return nothing. So an empty return inside a set just means like don't change the value. If I did return 50, then the farmer's health would change to 50. But because I did nothing, then nothing will happen. Of course, you could just do return value like this, and then that's like, yeah. I mean, that makes sense if it makes sense, but anyway. Um, if this is not true, well, actually, well, yeah. So it checks this first, and then it checks this afterwards. And if it is a player, then change the M auto recovery delay to two to two. Now, I couldn't tell you why this is here. Um, I can just tell you what the code does, but you can kind of see here, like, if you wanted to mod something, you need to be able to just read this code, see what's being checked, and see, okay, do I want to change anything here? So let's see if I find a more useful example. Um, okay, so this changes the health to clamp of value 0 and the max health. What clamp does, it says like, if my max health is 200 and like I've changed it to 300, well, hold on, slow down. My max health is 200, so I'm going to bring you down back to 200. You cannot go over it. You want to do 300? No, 200. Uh, that's what that does. And it says like, okay, if it's 50, that's fine. 60, fine. 170, that's fine. 210, you can't do that. And then it brings it back down to 200. I say that because clamp will show up quite a bit for like these max something variables. Then checks if is a player. Then if the M stats health is less than or equal to 1.0.1, um, so if the health is less than 0.1, that's a bit crazy, then you have a leniency timer. So if I'm not mistaken, this might actually be, yeah. So if your health drops below 0.1, this will set your health to 0.1 and give you invincibility, I think. So I think the leniency timer is literally invincibility. So you know how like when you are the samurai and you go like to very low health and you have some invincibility. That's it. We've just found the code that literally says that. And then it says that again, if I still well actually for anything, if my health is less than 0, die. And it calls the function die. And that's it. So just by looking at this one variable, we found the code that literally has the player's invincibility and also determines what happens when any character, has their health go less than 0. They die. And, let's keep exploring. What the hell happens if they die? Let's go to the die function. Just keep going until you find it. Here you go. You'll notice you'll know it's a function definition if you has like public something something something, right? Like if I search for die, there are 32 different instances of it. Well, actually, there are 7 to be more exact. But like here, it's used right. This is just using the function. The actual definition looks like this. This tells us what die actually does. We can see it's public, which means that anyone can use it. I can do farmer.die and they will die. It's a void. Functions are kind of similar to variables. Like if this was int, then the variable die would give me back an integer. Like let's say I had public int 2 plus 2, right? And then I just return 2 plus 2. Well, that's 4, right? So it returns 4. And then because 4 is an integer, then that's how that works. So then if I were to use like print 2 plus 2, then it'll just print 4. Whatever. However, if I have void, it means that I'd return nothing. So either like this or just like this. I don't do anything. I mean, I do something, but like I don't return a value. So you can see here, if a character dies, then the character will change, like stuff inside the character will change, but the character won't like return anything. And this is unique to object-oriented programming. Um, well, that's not true. It's unique to something I'll talk about in a bit called side effects. But just know that void means we return no value. If there is something here, if there is, it means that we are going to literally return something like whatever. Let's just quickly explain this. Let's say instead of 2 plus 2, I just had add two numbers. And then inside the brackets, I want to put int a and int b. And then I'm going to return a plus b. Very simple function. Let's say I want to use this function, I would do add two numbers, and let's say I want to add 3 and 5, right? This will obviously give you 8, because 8 is 3 plus 5. What we've done is that we have this here and this here. These are also variables, but we call them arguments, because we're passing them into the function. So the first one here is 3, second one here is 5, and then returns 3 plus 5 as an integer. That's how you read a function, just very quickly. And I can do this for other numbers. Because like the obvious thing is like I don't want to have to write the same code over and over again, right? If I could just put it into a function that makes things a lot simpler, then that's nice. So like here, there are actually two different versions of die in our code, which I didn't even notice. Wow. One has no arguments, one has a string argument. So I can do either, it seems, I can do either like farmer.die and just kill the farmer, or I can do farmer.die and then probably choose a certain animation. Like let's say I wanted to die head, like the head falls off. In fact, let's change this to zombie, because I think that makes more sense, right? So here it just dies and does this. If I do die head, it will skip this function, use this function instead, and specifically use my die head function. This is called function overloading, something to just be wary of and notice. But anyway, let's read this function. So die, we have a string called die animation, which is die. Again, string's just text. And then we have a switch statement. You might know if statements already, like if then, pretty simple. A switch statement is a bit like that, but instead of like if then, you just have cases. Like switch 2 plus 2. Yeah. Case 4 could be like, I don't know, print, yep. And then break. And then like case 5, like whatever. Like basically you're saying whatever this value is, if it matches this, do this. If it matches this, do this, etc. So here it's saying switch on the last attack type hit with. Okay, that's cool. So here we can see what actually controls like the thing, right? So like if a samurai does a big katana slash, right? It usually chops off the zombies' heads. And you can see here, if the type it's been hit with is a slice, like a katana slash, I assume, that it will change it to die head if it's not being knocked back. Which is kind of cool, right? So if we wanted to, we could change it so that instead of having their head get chopped off, they explode. So now if you use katana slash on zombies that die, they'll explode. So you could do that if you wanted to. Or you have like stomp. Stomp is removed, is an ability that was removed from the game, and dice smash doesn't exist. Unfortunately, it's not a real animation, but it's there anyway. Don't know what Sonic is, to be honest. Stealth, don't know what that is either. There's some weird things in here. Trample we know, just die head. Ashes, die ashes. I don't know if that's even an animation. Anyway, the thing to be careful of, right, is that this game, although it's a professional game, like it's full of code that just shouldn't be there. Like this die smash, like this literally doesn't exist. It just shouldn't be here. Or like die ashes, like this animation was never added. It shouldn't be here. So sometimes like it can kind of suck because you're like, oh, I can change this, and then you realize, oh, it doesn't exist. It's just in the code. So be careful of that. And then for that reason, like it's useful to like have knowledge about the game, because then you can figure out what you can actually change. But anyway, just to quickly summarize this, it sets the default animation die anim to die. Um, Depending on the last attack it's been hit by, like a slice or lightning, then it will change the animation. Otherwise, it will just keep the default one, which is just a normal die animation. Then it checks if it is an enemy and it has not started its death animation yet, and the wave is done, and the enemy count is 1, so basically it's the last zombie alive, then set the die animation to explode, and then die. So then this calls, actually, this die function here will then call this die function here using that die animation. So if the last one here, die anim equals die explode, if this is what was set to this, then this will become this here, and then this will become this here, and this will become like that, right? So we're just adding it and like substituting it into the next function. So that's cool. But by the way, this is the first time I've seen this code, and I can already tell you, like just by reading what's here, I can see if it's an enemy and it hasn't started dying yet, and the wave has been completed, and it's the last enemy left because the enemy's count is 1, explode. And this is true, right? If there is one more zombie left and you kill them, I think they explode in the game, right? So if you wanted to, you could change this to anything else you wanted to a different animation. Then we have the die function here, so it clears the buff icon. I think the buff icon is like like the flute guys, right? I forgot what they're called, but like it puts like a symbol above them. Here, I think it just gets rid of that. Buff icon not clear makes sense, right? Um, if the length is less than 3, yeah. So you do need to understand a bit about like the language itself, like length. So because animation is a string, dianim is a string. Length gives you the length of the string. So like if it's like you know die explode, the length of this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this dianim dot length would be 10, for example. Here it says it was less than 3, so like very small. Or again, these two parts is or. The current animation length is less than 3 as well. Or the first 3 characters, so substring is like the first whatever, the first 3 characters of this is die, or the current animation starts with die. So basically, if they're dying, then single attack target equals null, so no longer target anyone. If on death event does not equal null. Events are a thing as well, by the way. I'm not going to explain them right now, but events are quite useful if you want to like get something to happen. Like I guess it's too much to explain right now. Does more code, whatever. If the melee weapon is not null, so like if it has a melee weapon, then don't have a ranged attack and then die. There you go, die, finally. So yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it there. Um, like yeah, I'm not gonna explain things further, but just to give you an idea of like how to read code. So not all code is so easy to read. Like for example, this here, if melee weapon prefab does not equal null, it'd be so much easier if it just says like if has melee weapon, right? Like if this was a function that the character had, that'd be so much easier. But instead, it checks it like this, and this takes a bit more knowledge to like understand what's actually going on. But I mean, if you look at this is honestly really simple. Like it looks like a lot, but if you just read it and try to understand it, like English, it's actually quite easy. It says if it is an enemy and not the controller, which I assume is like the animation controller or the model controller, has started the death animation. In fact, I'll write it out as a comment right here. If is an enemy and is not, well, and the controller has not started its death animation. Again, start to die animation. And we have here our wave manager. We're just saying, is it done? This, by the way, is a singleton. I'm not going to explain what a singleton is right now, but just know that if you have like something.instance, it means it's like a global thing that like can be used anywhere, usually. So like anyone can check if the wave is done, for instance. It's quite interesting and not very good, but anyway. So and wave is complete, is done, and here again we have the characters manager, so another like singleton, which is like global and it has an enemies count. So an if and is the last enemy. Now here it says enemies count equals 1. I can like use my logic to infer that this just means the last one. Because what does it mean? Like you use your logic. What does it mean if if the wave is done and there's one enemy left? It means that the enemy left is the last enemy, right? So there you go. This is how I've read this in English. So now I understand what this is checking. I can see what it does. It sets the die animation to explode. Okay. So set animation to explode. And then set some kind of impact pause time. I don't know what this even means, but I don't have to know what it means. Like as long as I just focus on what I care about, then I can still do stuff that's useful for modding. And then exit and just die with this. So there you go. That's quite long, but just hopefully if you watched far, you should get an idea of like how to go about reading code. I'll do one more example. Without like introducing new concepts. Because like the functions are the main things you want to look at. Because the functions are like where the actual logic is. The variables and stuff, like if you want to change like stats and stuff, those are usually in the txt files anyway, the registry. But the real stuff is the functions. So let's have a look at. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but like this function is probably what's responsible for like the Jorogumo, the spider lady, spawning like little baby spiders when she dies, right? Like I think if you looked at this code, you'd probably be able to figure that out. This here function, I can see like health, whatever is equal to 0, and the health recovery is not equal to 0. Then like it increases the health just based on the name. Like this is probably like for the health regeneration, right? Health regen for the samurai, the hero, or the even the zombies, right? Because they have health generation. Apply ice effect. I mean, yeah, like if this was more clear, it'd be apply lethargy, right? But even here we can see we're setting the ability ID to lethargy. It says if the selected mode is zombie mode, zombies rising, then instead of using lethargy, use lethargy ZM, which is just zombie lethargy, right? You can find this in the registry. And there you go. You can edit that if you want to. There's like some stuff here with like color, right? So like let's say I wanted to make it blue instead of reds. Like why not, I guess? Or like something along those lines. But yeah, red, green, blue. So you could like change that if you wanted to change the color maybe. Um yeah. That's yeah. So there's I mean yeah, there's loads to explore. Loads of mods to, be figured out. Um as a programmer, especially like if you're new to coding, you're going to start very small. But then if you just keep on practicing, keep on trying different things, you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to improve. Like even just while recording this video, this 50-minute video, I've really learned quite a bit about how the game works just by reading that. and a bit more about how like C sharp kind of works. Because I mean, I myself, like, I'm not a C sharp expert by any means. Like, I use C++, I use Haskell, I use other languages, but just knowing the programming concepts can help you get through different languages a lot more easily. So, final advice: try. Like, if it looks difficult, just read. Just read the code. Try like take the English words and just put them together and see what you can figure out. You are going to get stuff like, what does exclamation mark equals means, and then for that I would ask like ChatGPT, what does this mean in C sharp code? Oh well, it means not equals. Oh, okay. What does null mean? Oh well, null means that there's nothing connected to it. Okay, so it's like an empty object. Okay, and then you can get that. Even better if like, I keep saying read like English. If your English isn't that strong, because maybe it's not your native language, then you can ask ChatGPT to explain it to you. Explain it to you in your own language. That's fine. So, an exercise that I would do, as you right now, a modder that wants to mod code, I would go into any file, look for functions that seem interesting, like they have interesting names, or you see interesting variables, like what's a good example? Like, oh, I see a variable called like wave count. Okay, maybe I can do something with like the waves. Or like, oh, I see like a zombie mode variable. Maybe I can like do something there. So just look for stuff like that, um, and then read the code around it and see what you can do. Because even if it's like a small mod, it might be interesting. And well, I'll talk about this later, but I'll see if I can figure out a way to get like small mods working for the game. Because right now, like, we have to edit the big project and then recompile it. But if we can get small plugins using Melon Loader, that'd be cool. But anyway, so find something interesting, like an interesting function. Let's say you want to take, I don't know, set damage over time, right? Read it. Okay, what can I understand? Damage per tick, it's a float. Tick frequency, it's like a decimal again. Okay, blah blah blah. Okay, I kind of understand it. Then you can copy paste it into ChatGPT. Say, can you explain this function to me? It will explain anything to you. Like, and you can ask it questions like, what's a float? Well, a float is this. Blah 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 blah. If you already know what like an int, a float, a variable, a function is, you should be fine. If you are unsure about like what a function is, what a class is, what a type is, what a return type is, I would go ahead and either watch some videos or just like, well, you can watch videos, you can do online tutorials like on websites, or you can just talk to ChatGPT as if it's like a tutor and just ask it different things. Um, I can tell you now, it's not going to be easy. Coding is not easy. Like, it's logical thinking, you know. Like, it's it seems easy once you have it, but when you don't have it, I understand it can be quite difficult. Like, you can just look at this code and be like, "Mm." But then once you actually start reading it, then your brain will be like, okay, I can kind of understand this. It'll be tiring at first, you know. It's like if you ask a 7-year old to just pick up some like really big book, like Lord of the Rings, and just ask a 7-year old to read that. Like, they're gonna struggle because it's like big words and stuff, and like it's lots of text and they get tired of reading, like they can't understand everything. You'll probably be like that at first, but if you just push through, then you can very easily become a very good programmer very quickly, honestly. Um, Anything else then? I don't think so. Yeah, just go ahead, have a look, have fun. Hopefully this has helped you. Again, any questions, ask me, or ChatGPT, but you should ask me as well because ChatGPT can get things wrong. So I'll try my best to help as well if I have time. Um, yeah. Final tips: use VS Code because it's probably the best. Well, one of the best out there. It's free, so just use it. Um, and if you use VS Code, you can right click on a folder, open it with code, and then you see the search icon on the left. Let's say I want to just look for like zombie mode. This will give you this will search every single file very quickly and give you all of them. So here, like in profile.cs, oh, look at this. Public bool zombie bull unlocked. Huh. Selected mode does not equal classic, return true. It's like, okay, well now I can, if I just follow this, I can probably figure out how to unlock zombie mode earlier or something like that. So hey, that's kind of cool, isn't it? Um, so yeah, there's a lot you can do. There's a lot you can do. Go do it. Got him.